Okay, day 9, day 10, somewhere in there. I'm already losing track a little bit, which is funny because if I'm going to keep this up for like 100 days, I can already see now how out of order everything's going to be. But that's all right. How about just next day? This is the next day. So I was thinking a little bit about what to talk about, and it kind of hit me a little bit this idea of consistency and discipline and like what makes for a good drawing session. So I just traveled again back to New York. And so then that was just like in the last day or two I was traveling. Um, and still trying to keep these drawings like in the middle of all of this traveling. Um, and today I'm absolutely exhausted. It's super late at night, like totally dark out. This is like the last thing I'm doing today, which I always prefer drawing to be doing the first thing. Exhausted, don't really feel that great. A bit tense, a bit stressed maybe not stressed, but like a bit tense for sure about doing these, you know, about doing these daily drawings. Not really feeling inspired or motivated. And I was like, okay, so like what makes a good drawing session? And it's actually the opposite of these things. So like I think for me, a good drawing session, I'm looking for three things. I care about how I physically feel. So this is things like, am I rested? Um, am I well fed? Like, am I feeling good? Like maybe I exercised recently or worked out and I'm like, my body feels good, and healthy. And that's like your physical feeling, your physical health. Then the second aspect is how inspired you might be or motivated. And this is like the most fickle and the one that you can kind of rely on the least for drawing sessions. When you're working with like discipline and consistency, it tends to be like a little bit at odds with motivation and inspiration. Because like when you're inspired and motivated, it's so easy to sit down and make art. Like the real artistry, like the real craft of being an artist, is what you're doing in those days where you're not feeling motivated and you're not feeling inspired at all. When you are, it's amazing, and so that makes for a great session. And then the third aspect would be something like feeling relaxed or feeling kind of open to what might happen with the drawing. There's like a lot of serendipity that happens in a drawing, or in any art session. And if you're not relaxed and open and like having some kind of receiving energy from your art piece, it's hard to, unless I guess you're one of those artists that really does like have tries to convey a sense of stress or a sense of anxiety, a sense of like intensity in their work. Um, but if you're more often than not, I would say, especially for myself, like I'm trying to capture something that's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more artful, a little bit more delicate. And so I should feel in that state. You should feel in like kind of a relaxed, flowing state, like kind of letting the energy of life just kind of like take you a little bit. There's some specific words I'm searching for there. Ease and delight, some ease and delight of the artwork and of life. And these make for, great artwork for me, these three aspects. So again, physical health, your inspiration or motivation, like inherent inspiration to create art, and then how kind of relaxed and in this like ease and delight state you are. And right now, I would say I have zero of these three things. And so, under ordinary conditions, I might not even necessarily force myself to practice. But there's also something to be said, it's kind of like going to the gym. Like the worst the worst workout is the one that you didn't do. The worst drawing session is the one that you didn't do. And so I'm going to kind of adapt to these conditions though, and I'm not going to like challenge myself. It's not like, okay, not feeling this at all. Let's do the hardest possible gestural pose and, like really like challenge ourselves to the limit. I think instead I'm going to kind of go easy on myself and like let's pick some reference that has some sort of like subtle moderate gesture, and then just take it through the 2D in the 3D construction phase and just kind of finish the block in and see how that looks. And I think like that's like kind of a nice compromise between still sticking with drawing every day and kind of like not giving up on it, but also not absolutely crushing myself with trying to meet these goals. So that being said, let's jump into like another gestural drawing. We'll just do the 2D construction and the 3D construction and kind of the block in and see if we can capture some pose. Okay, so maybe as expected, that did not go very well. I'm not happy at all with the drawing, and actually, under different conditions, I would probably not even post this. This is the kind of drawing that, you know, lives in that sketchbook and is flipped when you're flipping through it later. You like either tear it out or you flip past it so quickly. Um, yeah, not a good drawing. But again, the conditions for a good drawing were not really present. I had like none of the three conditions that we talked about. Not feeling super physically well. I'm exhausted and don't actually feel the best. Um, don't have any inspiration. Didn't really have any inspiration. Even the reference, although it's kind of nice, like it wasn't really necessarily inspiring anything in me. And then I yeah am not relaxed. I think it's probably pretty obvious even by my like mannerisms and the way that I'm talking. But but I'm still happy that I did the drawing. That I kind of practiced that muscle of discipline and consistency in the drawing. And I will say, excuse me, even though it looks weird and I'm not a big fan of it, the gesture is not horrible. I actually did capture the tilt of the face to some extent. I think I was working like yeah the you know this the state of like not being relaxed was coming out too much in the drawing where I was like pushing very hard with the pencil, making really dark lines instead of subtle lines, and I mean that kind of creates some weird like if you are drawing these creases that are around the edge of the nose and like this is kind of one rhythm, right, where you have these creases that come around the lips and come down to the bottom of the chin. If you draw that very dark, it's immediately going to be a weirder drawing. It's just not like nobody has that so dark. And so if you put it in very dark, it's just like has this like bizarre feel to it. Like it ages the drawing. It kind of like gives it almost like a clown effect. So I had like a lot of these kinds of issues in the drawing itself. But I mean, the orientation of the face, I think, is more or less correct. The hair might be correct. I was having like in terms of like the shape of it, I was having some trouble with the hair. Obviously, because there's no texture or no design in it, it doesn't look good at all. It's just like a giant mass. Um, but like that's also a bit on me because that's kind of how I've been rendering hair. For reasons that I'll discuss it later. I mean, well, just briefly, it's because I'm like consider myself more a painter than a drawer. And when you're painting hair by blocking in one mass, it tends to actually work really well. And I don't do a lot of rendering of the hair in my drawings, and that's kind of like stylistically what I prefer. Could I benefit from practicing hair? Yes, but as we see, there's like a lot of other things that are on the agenda. Um, so anyway, like the gesture's not horrible. Like at least I kind of made a conscious effort on trying to capture the angle of the head and angle of the eyebrows, and I did notice myself losing it, and then I would try and put it back in, losing it, putting it back in, losing it, putting it back in, and that repetition of that is something that you struggle with regardless, even on a good drawing. So even in a good session. So like if I'm at least getting some repetitions of that, just like repetitions at the gym, like just practicing this exercise of okay, try and capture the gesture. Is the center line at the appropriate angle? Is the brow line at the appropriate angle? Is the bottom of the nose at the appropriate mouth, chin, all of these things, sides, the lines for the sides of the face. It's always good. It's always good practice. So anyway, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna get some sleep, and hopefully tomorrow is a better day.